Politico reporting that White House Chief of Staff John Kelly is aiming to stop the president from making policy announcements on Twitter. That report says Kelly knows that he can't stop Mr. Trump from tweeting. But according to a White House official, the goal is, quote, pushing the tweets in the right direction. The piece goes on to say that General Kelly would like to know what Trump is planning to tweet before he does so, and would prefer that big decisions not be announced on Twitter, but has privately conceded that there will be late night or early morning missives he cannot review. But Kellyanne Conway defending the president's use of social media. Watch.
First of all, the tweet didn't make policy, the tweet announced policy. This had been a conversation, discussions had with generals and other stakeholders for a very long time. The president announced it through the forum that he does that cuts out the middleman.
All right. So we know that this is who he is, right, Harris? I mean, this is part of his personality. This is a big part of his appeal. But if you're trying to manage him, as General Kelly is now, as Chief of Staff, how do you get him? Does he need to put the Twitter thing away? I mean, does he need to just stop this altogether?
I think it's give and take. I mean, I think you do have to let the president be himself in this instance. And hey, you can't get mad at the fact that he's got millions of people who are following him. And he can get around the mainstream media with a quick tweet, and it may not be setting policy, but it can set narrative. And since messaging has been such a challenge for the White House, you almost don't want to see him stop some of that because they need it. They still don't have a comms director. They still don't have certain apparatus.
And can I add to that? He still has only held one news conference since he came into the White House. So if he wasn't tweeting, it's almost like we wouldn't be hearing from him that much. So I'm just throwing that out there as maybe it distracts from the fact that we haven't had him take on journalists in his
Their challenge, isn't it, Kennedy, that, you know, all of a sudden he tweets something and it feels off message for them, or, you know, he's going in a direction that the rest of the team didn't know he planned to go in, and so they're scrambling to catch up.
Yeah, and that requires more discipline, and that's where General Kelly comes in. And last week, you know, they considered it a minor victory because the president tweeted a little bit less and was running things past General Kelly, obviously his new chief of staff. But then this morning, there's a flurry of stuff, and he's talking about Richard Blumenthal's Vietnam issues and challenges in regards to
the unicorn of military service that Senator Blumenthal
who perhaps shouldn't be judging collusion. And he's talking about, you know, hashtag fake news. And I think some of that, considering where we are, considering, you know, some of the high-profile departures we've had from the White House, maybe we should get back on message. And maybe we should hear more about what's going to happen with tax reform and, you know, a robust agenda for Congress to sink its teeth into.
But that would be so boring, right? No.
I mean, I think the base loves it. Unicorn was not the president's word.
I would say, and I say this, you know, it's having a background in business, Twitter was, you know, heading for nowhere's land. I mean, it was a company, and it still has its struggles, but he almost single-handedly has put Twitter, Richard, back on the map. I mean, you've got to be on Twitter if you want to know what the president's saying now.
No, I agree. I think he's put Twitter back on the map. I think the tweets work for his base. Here's the problem with it, right? So when he tweeted the fact that he was banning trans people from the military, right, that policy requires nuance because you have a couple thousand trans people currently serving, and so when journalists and trans people serving were like, does that mean I'm no longer serving? And
well, no, the Pentagon had that question too.
Right, and that's the problem with announcing policies in 140 characters. This is not a 140 character policy. This is a 5,000 word policy, and that is why you can't announce very complicated policies on Twitter. And that's why I think John Kelly's doing the right thing here by saying, Mr. President,
well,
these are complicated policies.
Where was the chief of staff this morning?
I have no idea, which is why the president has to be very careful about how he tweets, because he's the leader of the free world.
I think when he's too constrained, he explodes.